Good morning, everybody. Good morning. You're out there, right? Good morning. Hey, there you go. Some of you had your coffee this morning. Well, we're really glad that you're here. We're glad that you're here in the auditorium, and we're glad that we have people joining us online as well. And so here's the game plan for today. So, for this hour. So, for the first 30 minutes, I'm going to talk you through some key points and some elements of the application and application process. And then during this framework that I'm going to do, I'm going to engage our panel and ask them questions to get us started. And on our panel, we have Josh Hall, who will wave. Yay, thanks. See, there we go. Janelle Wentz, Arnaldo, Dr. Arnaldo, and Nancy Schwartz. And I'm Patricia Cameron, who will be moderating this. And then the second 30 minutes is yours. So pay attention to some questions and answers that you hear that you might want to follow up with. You will have an opportunity to do that. And also, we're not going to cover all the questions you may have. So you'll have the opportunity to come and ask questions to fill in the gaps. And we love your questions, so don't be shy. So first, I'm going to get us started with just a brief, this is all of us here. This is, we're going to get you started with some brief considerations to kind of frame the discussion that we'll have today. So first, I wanted to mention that your future is up to you. Your future is up to you. And so depending on the day, that might sound really exciting, or it might sound kind of daunting or scary. But I hope that after today, after you've heard this session, after you've gone and visited some of the booths, you feel more empowered to take responsibility for your choices and your future. That you feel more inspired and equipped to chase after your dreams. And importantly, you start to realize that yes, your future is up to you, but you are not alone. None of us, not one of us up here on this stage, have gotten to where we are in our careers without the help of others. And that's really not just a cliche. So I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing now, showing up, asking questions, seeking advice, and reaching out. Because by doing so, you're going to get that knowledge, you're going to get that support, you're going to get those tips that will help you through these processes and throughout your career as well. We are part of the different schools that you saw listed up there, but we're also part of the AAMC Great Outreach Group. And as part of that group, we do a number of virtual sessions throughout the year. We go to Abercams, we go to SACNAS, and we'd encourage you to follow us and visit us at those different events. If you want, you can email me, pcameron@augusta.edu, or visit our booths, give your names to any of these, and we can put you on the mailing list so you can also join some of our future virtual sessions and find out more information on some of the topics we talk about in terms of getting into graduate schools and succeeding. So not only is your future up to you, but it is up to you. So the second point I wanted to make is your future is up to you. So make it a good one. So think of these three questions as you think about what you want to do with your life and where you want to go. What is it that you like to do? What is it that you are good at doing or you want to continue to learn and do better? And what do you think the world needs? And when you ask these questions, it's important to ask them now as you're starting your journey, and then periodically throughout your journey. And by your journey and by your future, I mean, not that, oh, in 15 years I'll be here and there's this magical time in between. Your journey really starts tomorrow, today, tomorrow, the next days. So every day, what are you doing that you find that you enjoy? What are you good at? And what is your purpose? And if you can find that sweet spot where all of that comes together, then you're setting yourself up for a rewarding and enjoyable future. And so perspective, is that really possible? So for perspective, let me ask you this. You've had a lot of teachers in your life, right? You've gone to a lot of classes, teacher after teacher after teacher. But if I ask you, think of that one teacher who made a difference in your lives. One person, two people come to mind, right? I mean, I see some of you smiling, right? So yeah, there's that teacher that you come to mind. Of all those teachers, that one person stood out. Why? Why did they stand out? I bet if you think about it, you say, Did they like what they were doing? Absolutely. They came into class every day excited, enthusiastic, with a smile on their face, and it was contagious, right? Were they good at it? Yes. I like them as a teacher because they took a complex problem and they explained it like nobody else. They inspired me. And if you ask them, if you go back and ask, why did you do this? What was your purpose? What was your why? What did you think your calling was? They could articulate that for you. And that's what you want to aspire for. You want to be that person that makes a difference. You want to make choices for that future that allows you to not only do what you want to do, but to become who you want to be and be that special person. So aspire for that. And a PhD is a key to such a future. It was a key to that rewarding future for me. It was a key to my career. And as a PhD student, I had a blast. It was a fun time. I enjoyed the journey and I enjoy everything as I go along. And I'm sure it's the same for everyone on the panel as well. And it can be for you too. So let's get started to see if a PhD is a good fit for you and to offer you some tips and advice for getting into a PhD program. So now I'm going to ask my panel to complete this sentence for me. You, meaning all of you out there, should consider a PhD if. I'm going to start with Dr. Schwartz.
Thank you. Sorry to see everybody. So you should think about doing a PhD, and we're mostly focused on the sciences, the biological, physical sciences, but you can certainly do it in any other discipline. But one of the things you really need is a very strong background. So of course you have to have all the courses that you need. Usually in your major, we'll talk a little later about what if you want to change to doing a PhD or a higher degree in something different than what you did in college. You really need a good, strong background in that area. For the sciences, of course, you have to do research too. And not only get the experience, but also determine for yourself if you really like it. If that's what you want to do, that's what you like to do. You can't go on and go into a profession doing something that you really are not passionate about, dedicated to. And then there are certain qualities that we look for, and maybe we can talk about that later.
So we're going to go to Dr. Diaz-Vasquez. You should consider a PhD if.
I think if asking questions drives you forward.
Okay.
I mean, if you wake up in the morning and you want to find the answers to the unknown. I think that, I mean, that's my research part, but also the other part is like, I wanted to be the first in the family to get a PhD. And I wanted to have that title to empower others like it. So if you asking questions drives you, and if you have a motivation behind that is personal to you, that's also equally valid.
Dr. Wynn, you should consider a PhD if.
I think that you should consider a PhD if, well, to reiterate what Dr. said, that you have to have that passion for what you're studying, because that's really what's gonna drive you through. And using the previous experience that you have in research and you know that you can be dedicated to that, I think that then you should consider doing a PhD. And then also thinking about what you want for your future, because that's gonna come up time and time again. Like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do in the future? Does this align with my future goals? Once you consider that fully, I think then you should do a PhD.
Dr. Hall.
Yeah, I think I would say you should consider a PhD if you really like doing research right now. Most of what you'll be doing in grad school for 5 years or so is day in, day out, you'll be doing research. So imagine most of your undergrads, postbacks, technicians. So if you love going in lab and you're thinking, I want this to be part of my future career for sure, then I think grad school is a great choice. That doesn't mean that you necessarily are going to be having to do research for your whole life working in the lab. I don't think I've picked up a pipetter for well over a decade, but at the time I went to grad school, I couldn't imagine doing anything else, and research is what I really liked. So I think if you like research right now, that's an important part of choosing to go to grad school.
All right, thank you, panel. So if you ask, what are admissions committees looking for and why? So you want to do a PhD, you really love asking questions, discovery. You want to be the first person. You love doing research. So what are admissions committees looking for at why? And so to give you some perspective of why we look for certain things, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the PhD training. It's different than undergraduate, where you complete a set number of credit hours, you get grades, and you move on because you've been able to check those boxes. And the PhD, there's really three components to it. One is, yes, you do have to take classes. Some of them are foundational, and the others are classes that are more focused on journal clubs or the latest literature, because you are really looking forward in a PhD program to the future and what your discoveries lead to. A large core of the PhD program is research. We're talking a lot about biomedical or biosciences or different sciences, and there's different and this can be applied to other PhD programs to varying extents. So in a general model, there is a large component that is research, which is why Dr. Hall says you need to love doing research now, because there's a research. And that really drives how long your PhD program is. It may be 4 years, it may be 5 years, it may be 6 years. It's not that you do 10 experiments and you're done. You do experiments till you get to the point where you have a story to tell and results that support that story. And also, when you get a PhD, you're joining a career, you're becoming a professional, and you're becoming a leader in your field. And so as part of that, your training includes professional development, leadership development, skill enhancement. And so because of that, we invest in you, and you commit your time to this program. Your time, your resources, we commit our time, our resources. We pay in a biomedical PhD program, and in some others, you'll get a stipend. So we pay you to go to graduate school. We pay your tuition. We pay your health insurance. We don't want you to come in so we could weed you out after the first year. We bring you into the program so that you will succeed. And so we want you to know what you're getting into. And so we have certain things that we look for. I'll give you 2 examples, and then we'll ask our committee or our panel for more. So these are easy. I'm going to take the 2 easy ones. One is academic preparedness. We want you to come in, we want you to take the classes, we want you to pass, and we want you to move on. So we want to make sure that you can get through those classes, and that you have that passion for research based on the experiences that you've had. Not that I think I want to do research because I read about it and I think it's exciting, but because you have that experience. Because when you get into the program, you're going to be spending 4, 5, 6 years doing research, right? And so those are 2 examples of things that we look for, that admissions committees look for as we're reviewing applications. So I'm going to ask Josh, what else can you give me? I'm going to ask you guys to give me like one thing so we can quickly go down the panel. Go ahead, Josh. What do you think they're looking for in an admissions committee, and why is it important? Oh, turn on
I
your
think
mic.
we've already said it a number of times early on in this panel that doing research is a huge part, probably the most important part of doing your PhD. And because of that, admissions committees, when they look at your application, what they're really trying to assess is your potential to do research. So I think that's what you want to make sure shines through in your letters of recommendation from people who have done research with you, and your personal statement, that you really do want to do research and you have experience doing some research, and that's what you want to do. Related to that, that the type of research you want to do is actually the type of research they have going on at their institution. I think that's important. So,
Dr. Witt?
Yeah, so admissions committees are also looking for you to actually be curious about the science that you want to study, like to have that and that scientific thinking. And so you know, for example, at the school that I work at, they really look and evaluate, like, do you think about these questions in a certain way, not just that you do the research, you know, because in certain labs there are texts, there are different levels, but that you are curious about answering questions and that's kind of what they're looking.
Dr. Diaz-Vasquez?
So, your application will be reviewed by several committee members. So, and everybody's going to be probably looking for something different. But I think throughout your application, your why needs to be clear. Why you want to do a PhD, why this particular institution, why that particular research field, that might change. But knowing your why, I think is key in that institution, I mean, engaging with your application, because at that time, they're just reading materials. If you go to an interview, then that why is to be solid. Like why cancer immunotherapy? Why genetics? Why that particular field? Why? And your answer should be from the research mindset. This particular faculty, this center, the core facilities, your institution will empower me to answer my research questions.
Yeah, I'll just build on that, that being able to explain why this is the right path for you, why you really want to do this, is extremely important. And how you get the answers to that is by what you have done to determine that this is the right thing to do, the right thing for you, and that you really like it. This is where you want to dedicate your life to. And it's always good in these, when you write your personal statements, you know, you just don't make bland statements like that. You try to give a couple of examples of things that you have done that really prove that you're, you know, prepared, you thoroughly thought this through, you know it's the right thing for you, those kinds of things. Then there's a certain characteristics that we sometimes look for, you know, determination, commitment, resilience, all of those kind of things. You'll hear the reviewers talk about those kind of things. So it's also good to mention some stuff like that every now and then. And again, with an example, you know, experiments didn't work and I stayed up late trying to work on these things, something that really is convincing.
So wouldn't it be nice if we just had this checklist and we said, here's what we're looking for, check the box if you have it. But it doesn't really work that way. So you can't say, yes, I have resilience. Yes, I have this. So if you can't do that, how does a committee know that you have resilience, that you have motivation, that you know what you're getting into, that you have this love of science and a love of research and a capacity for teamwork and critical thinking and inspiration and all those things that committees are looking for? Well, the way they do that is they ask you to complete the application with many different parts of the application that allows you the framework to tell your story. And like Dr. Schwartz says, to just not say, I love research, I am really motivated to do this, but to give some examples as to how and why. And so your application consists of the form where you have the opportunity to talk about your awards and recognitions. A lot of programs also ask for CVs and resumes these days. There's different prompts where you do essays, and the essays have different names or different questions, but basically it's like a personal statement, a statement of purpose, and a research type statement. We ask for your academic transcripts and your record. There's letters of recommendation. Some people still ask for a GRE in some disciplines and others don't. And then there's the interview. And this is a framework for you to tell your story. And as part of the application, your job is to set yourself apart from all the other applicants in a good way, right? You want to stand out positively, right? You want to answer the prompts, read what they are asking for. Everyone will be a little different and ask what they want. This gives you the opportunity to stress what you want to stress about your story and showcase the relevant experience, competencies, and skills. So there's where that self-reflection comes in. Convince the committee that you're a good match for the program. You heard Dr. Diaz-Vasquez saying, you know, why my school? Why this program? Why this field? And so you need to convince them that you're a good match. Don't simply say, I am a good match. You're going to have to say why. appear as a person rather than just a set of numbers. We see your transcripts, we see your grades, we see the number, but we know you are more than that. We do a holistic review because we want to know you as a person, what drives you, why you do what you're doing, what you like to do, what you're good at, and why this is a good field for you. And make the admissions committee want to meet you. They're going to read lots of applications and you want them to invite you for an interview. So let's ask the panel. Oop, there we go. What are some typical points admissions committees are looking for in a personal statement or a statement of purpose? And who would like to take that first? All right, Arnaldo loves to. I told him if no one jumps in, he's going to be the one that I'm going to call on.
So
Go ahead.
the first thing that I look is like if you read the instructions. Sounds silly, but if they say 500 words, it's 500 words. I mean, that's the first step. We didn't what they want. I mean, some schools will ask for a statement of purpose, a personal statement, and a research statement, and some schools will ask just for one statement. So I have experienced some students in the past that they get to a point that they write one statement and then they say, oh, it's two statements now. So it's just knowing the instructions. I mean, at the beginning, it's easier on you. But for the personal statement is where those characteristics are not checking the box like resilience will come. For example, I'm Arnaldo Diaz from a small town in Puerto Rico. I'm a first generation college student that found research when I was 20 years old. You know, that's my story. So you're telling your story through 500 words, and you're telling, and that tells you, oh, he's the first in his family to go to college. He's the person, so that's the resiliency part that is built in that statement. So personal statement is a way for you to introduce yourself to the community. It's a way to highlight your why, the motivation behind why you're doing a PhD. I wanted to be the first one in my family. That's my motivation. But that's not the motivation for you. So find what's your motivation and then tell your story. I think that's what we're looking for in a personal statement.
The key there is personal. It's authentic, it's real, and it's personally yours. So they're looking for some common things, but it's not generic. It is personal to you and your story and how you tell that. Okay, so here's the next question, and I will ask Janelle if you can answer this. Should applicants explain any weaknesses? So what if you have a low GPA or you did bad in a class or something happened? Should you explain it? When should you and when shouldn't you? What do you think?
So for our admissions, we don't have like a minimum GPA for our program, but if there is one, having an explanation really helps. And I've seen cases in which they discuss, you know, sometimes there was personal conditions that happen, or there's, you know, whatever the circumstances is that can show resiliency, for example, for the low GPA, because you overcame the circumstance and you had to switch or do something and leave school or do like a leave of absence and come back. Like all of that adds to who you are as like a whole person, you know. So holistically, it adds into your motivation. Why do you want to continue? And explain. If you don't explain it, then we'll question why didn't you explain it. So if it's obvious that you have something that is really low, and the admissions committee see it and there's no explanation, then they're like, why is this person hiding it? So in my opinion, I think you should explain.
Josh, would you like to talk a little about, if you're going to explain it, what are some of the ways to explain it so it comes off well to the committee?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it is important to address it. So the committee, like if you got a D in organic chemistry, people have been there, people are going to see it. The admissions committee, they are going to see that. So it's your chance to control the narrative and maybe just talk about what happened. Maybe, you know, you had a challenging semester, you had to work a lot of hours to support yourself through college, whatever it was. But I think what's important is what you learned from it, and you can sort of steer it to, here's what I learned, here's how I moved forward, without really, I think you don't want to spend too much time pointing out the negatives, but just address it, talk about what you learned and move on. I do want to say one quick thing about this that I think is really important and related. And that is if you feel like you have a lower GPA or some classes you didn't do as well as you would have liked, or maybe you have to take a standardized test and your score is not as high as you would like, don't let that stop you. that is not an indicator of how well you will do in research or your potential to be a scientist or researcher. I've been involved in research and others have too, looking at that specifically, and your GPA and your GRE scores in no way predict how well you will do in grad school. There are plenty of scientists that I know who have GPAs under 3 in undergrad, very low GRE scores, who now run their own labs, are leaders in industry, have R1 grants. So don't take yourself out of this path if research is what you love, just because of some grades.
Very good points. What you want to do is you want to tell your story in a positive way, framing it on what you've learned and how you've overcome it. You don't want to get into making excuses or blaming. That won't come off as well. There'll be other times in your life, in your career as a PhD student and beyond, where things won't go well. And so the opportunity to be able to learn and move on and show that shows resilience, that shows persistence, that shows motivation, that shows you don't give up. That's what they want to see, not a blame or a excuses for it that are that won't go over well. So the next question is,
What I think that comes up often is we'll ask about having someone else make a comment about a hiccup in your record.
mhm.
And that is a good way. If you have a trusted mentor, it's good for them to sort of also put a couple of words of explanation in there about what happened. And then, you know, make a statement like, this record or this incident does not reflect the potential of this student. And that's very convincing to us.
And that's where others can help and support you forward as well. So research experience, you've heard over and over that research is really important as part of your training, and it's important to get into a program. So where can applicants get research experience? And I'm going to put both of these at the same time and ask, and how do you know what's enough research experience? Do you get one long research experience? Do you do a short one? If you have research embedded in labs and classwork, is that enough? So I'll ask a couple people, you can answer one of those questions as you go, and we'll try to get a little perspective. So let's see, Josh, you want to start? We'll go down the row. Which question do you want to go with?
Sure, I can go with what type of research experience is best, because this is something I saw lots of times come up in admissions committees, and Arnaldo mentioned multiple people are going to be looking at your application, and they may have very different points of view on this. I think the best research experience to get is the research experience you have available to you, to be honest with you. There are certainly students who come into grad school who had one really long research experience, maybe at their undergrad institution, and there are others who maybe they did a summer program, 3 different summers and 3 different labs, so 3 short research experiences. One thing I will note, I don't know how many of you are undergrads versus you've already graduated, but I can say in the PhD program admissions that I was part of for a number of years, 70% of our incoming PhD students actually did research after undergrad. So they worked in some research capacity after that. Only 30% came straight from undergrad. And I think one reason for that is the research experience really is the #1 thing you can do to boost your competitiveness. So if you don't feel like you have enough research experience, you don't feel quite ready right out of undergrad, that is okay. You actually are in the norm of people who go work as a technician or join a post-bac program or come to NIH to work for a little while. That's a great thing to do to boost your competitiveness.
All right, is there anyone that wants to follow up? I think he answered a bunch, but go ahead, Nancy.
You can certainly probably find research experiences where you're going to college. You know, summer programs, part-time research during the year, senior honor thesis, all this kind of stuff. It's also good to get a different perspective and at least maybe do 1 summer at a different institution. And it also starts you on looking for schools that you might be interested in doing a PhD in. And then the other thing is afterwards, as Josh mentioned, that the large number of students do take time off, and usually we call it a gap year or something between college and going on to graduate school. It's not just a breather, but it's really preparing you for graduate school. There's a whole lot of NIH funded programs called PrEP that are designed exactly for this purpose. So there's just so many opportunities there for you to experience.
All right. So I'm going to ask Arnaldo, how can applicants whose research background is different from their proposed research in graduate school best present themselves in the application? I've done all this research on plant research and it's been great. I love research. I love asking the questions. I have the curiosity. I've been involved in analyzing the data and writing a paper. I absolutely love it. But now I want to go to graduate school and do cancer research. How do I make that story and does that work? Or do I have to spend time doing cancer research? How do you make that transition? Is it possible? What do you do?
So my research as an undergrad was physical chemistry, because you do the research that is available to you, like to wholesale. So that was, did I love for physical chemistry? No, but that was available for me at the time. My PhD is in biochemistry. So for me, research is research. It's asking questions, hypothesis-driven research. It is giving you the skills to approach scientific questions with a scientific method. And I think that could be applied to any field. Now, if your research is all in cell biology and you want to do organic chemistry, then you might need to do a postdoc. Get additional experience in organic chemistry, but research is research. And I think the way that you present this is that you talk about your research experiences and then you emphasize the why you want to pursue this different path and what skills or what experience you bring in from your current experience that could help you address those questions or complement those questions. If you have a background in biomedical engineering, but want to do like tissue regeneration, your skills as a mechanical engineer or biomedical engineer, how could those be applied to a scientific question in a different field? And I think that's how I will approach the question.
Okay, we're getting close on time, so we'll come back to some of these. I know you guys will ask, but you're all sitting here, you're thinking, wow, these essays are really important. So I'm going to just go, I'm going to type it into Chat GPT, one of these AI things, and it's going to spit out this great essay for me, and that's going to solve all my problems. What do y'all think? Is that the answer? What is your guidance? What do you think about Chat GPT? And is that gonna impress the admissions committee? Who wants to tackle that? I think there's your answer.
Well, okay. So, and that certainly, maybe your institution does not have a set policy on it, which is why no one's jumping in immediately. I can say now in my current position, I actually run a fellowship program for graduate students. This is something we've been talking a little bit about. And I think where we may land on it is similar to, I've seen certain research journals are starting to do this now, where we may say, for your application, we want to learn about who authentically you and like how you think and your experiences. ChatGPT doesn't know that, so we discourage use of AI tools in completing this application. However, please disclose any use of AI tools you utilized in completing the application. And truthfully, we probably will include something like failure to disclose how you've utilized those tools could result in you being disqualified from the application. That's where our thinking is now. We haven't officially implemented that yet, but that's where our mind is right now.
Anyone want to add a follow-up question, comment?
So I'll say that this tendency is to tell your unique story, and that's unique to you. No AI system is going to tell that story for you, but AI is there to support you. These are tools that are amazing tools, but you have to be smart, you have to be honest, transparent, and as Dr. Hall said, disclose. If you're using any type of tool, but don't give away the opportunity of telling your story to an AI tool, because that's your story. And if you go through the admissions and you get the interviews and they meet you in person, the AI will not be there answering the question for you,
Mhm.
and those questions should match whatever you wrote on your statements, because that will come across. So, I mean, don't give away the opportunity to tell your story.
So I think a lot of schools are still collecting data. We know AI is here. We know it's part of the future, but how we use it, it's not quite clear in terms of policies yet. But if a school asks, have you used AI? This is your honesty, your character, your integrity. If you used it, say yes. If you didn't, say no. And right now, the AI that's out there, a lot of it creates really bland generic statements. That's not what's going to get you into graduate school. It's going to be your personal story. So have confidence, have faith in your story, and tell your story. And then I think that will help. Okay, letters of recommendation. These are really important. These are the voices of people who know you and know you well, and they can be very powerful and add to your application packet. So they talk about your academic and scientific accomplishments, your potential in a chosen career, your character, your personality, the relevant applicable skills and abilities you have. Any bumps in the road, Dr. Schwartz mentioned that. If you have a grade and you took a class with someone and you got a D the first time, and then you took other classes, and they can say, hey, they took classes with me, didn't do well the first time, but came back. They can really be a strong voice on your behalf, but you need to ask them. And the more that they can provide data and examples to support you and what they're saying, the better. So that means choose wisely, choose people you know. So I'm going to ask the group, who do you recommend that applicants should ask for strong letters of recommendation? And what advice do you have for how to ask and what to ask for? Jump right in. Go ahead, Dr. Witt.
So I would suggest that you ask for, so before going to a PhD program, you need research experience. So you're gonna need a letter from whoever you've done your research experience with. And you can have varying lengths of experience. You can have some short summer research or maybe just a semester. So I would look at who you've done research with the longest, that have seen a lot of the variety of different skills that you've done in the lab, that can advocate and speak on that. That's gonna help definitely with the recommendation for the program.
Actually, it becomes a red flag if you have worked for somebody and it's a research advisor and you don't ask them. People will be like, why didn't they ask their research advisor? This is a research degree. So it's good to ask your research advisor. Professors who you've taken classes with, right? Undergraduate classes with, and did well. And when you ask, what kind of a recommendation should you ask for? A strong one, right? That's what you want. You want to ask someone, hey, will you write me a strong recommendation? And if they go, you already know, move on, right? You want someone to write that strong recommendation because you want to use it to get in. So now I'm going to ask you guys to come to the microphones and ask some questions, and let's hear from you guys. While they're coming forward, I'm going to just say, how many programs, schools do you think people should apply for? How many applications should they submit? What do you think? Is there a fixed number or not just one or whatever? What'd you say?
It's seven.
Seven?
I
More than one?
I would say is every program you apply to, you should have a sincere reason why you're applying for
Yeah.
that program.
So more than one and a couple. And also pay attention to when you apply. You can apply to some by a certain date and the application fee is waived. So that's a really good thing. And so you can apply to more than one. It won't be a financial burden, but make sure that you have an interest in it. All right, at the podium, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so
Hi.
much for joining us today. I really appreciate all the advice you've given us so far. I just wanted to really quickly ask, in like backpedaling to the trend with GREs no longer being required,
Okay.
or at least for some schools, would you say that for your institutions or across the trend for graduate programs, if you still provide a GRE score, are you a more favored applicant? Does it have more impact in your competitiveness?
So our application do not ask for the GRE. And Dr. Hall has peer review articles out there on GRE subject. Yeah, if the program require you to submit the score, go ahead. But if it's not needed, my recommendation is not to submit the score.
Okay, I guess I mean more so if it's optional, does it have impact? Does it not have impact? Would you guys know?
Well, I can tell you in practice, the program I was affiliated with, we transitioned from requiring it to not requiring it. There was a phase where it was optional for maybe a year or two. And in practice, those years it was optional, it was not utilized at all because, it's, how do you compare that among other applicants where most of them are not submitting it? So my recommendation would be optional, don't submit. And don't go to the expense of taking it, studying, paying to send your scores. There are plenty of programs, if you're at least in the biomedical world or the science PhD world, that don't require it. So I would stick with those.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Programs have done away with it. The only one where I come across where there is still some difficulty is some of the social science humanities students. If you're a neuroscience major and you apply to psychology departments, you find out like a week before you're submitting your information and, oh my God, I need GREs too. So that's just where there's an overlap, and sometimes the physical science still requires this. You gotta watch it, kind of crossing borders there a little bit.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I'm short. Hi. Do you have any advice for people who don't necessarily know what their research interest is yet and are kind of hoping they'll figure things out once they get into grad school and do rotations? Because I know a lot of advice says like, what do you want to do in your research statement of purpose? Just if you're not sure yet, do you have advice for that?
Good question. So if you, so there's some umbrella programs, and if you're not sure of exactly what you want, but you love research, you need to get across that you've done research, you love research, you want to do, and you're considering a couple options, right? Umbrella programs allow you to do that. You can say, right now, I'm thinking of this and I'm thinking of that, and you can give reasons, but you're also open to other things. I can tell you, we have an umbrella program. There are people who come into the program and say, absolutely, neuroscience is exactly what I want to do. They come in, they do a rotation in a cancer biology lab, and they're like, wow, I met this person, I met this mentor, I didn't even know this existed, and I love that, and they can switch. So if you're not sure, you need to make sure you still make the case that you love research, that you're thinking about certain areas, and that school offers those, and you'll explore those, but you're still open to what your final thing is. Anyone else want to add?
I think the one thing I would avoid on your, because that is actually great advice. There are plenty of interdisciplinary programs. The one thing I would avoid is saying in your personal statement, I just love research, I'm open to anything.
Right, you don't want to do that.
If you actually feel that way, I don't know that I think you might just focus on, here's the research experience I've had so far, here are things I liked about those fields, I'm open to exploring other things, which is why I chose your program, because I can do that.
Yes.
But show some interest based on things you've done. But the truth is, once you get there in this program, you can do whatever you want.
Right, so you can say, I'm still open, but I'm thinking of XYZ. Don't forget the last part of that sentence, because you have to show at least a direction and what you're considering, but you're still open. And that's why you picked an interdisciplinary. Now, if you apply to a neuroscience program and you say you're still not sure, that would be an issue, right? So if you're applying to a neuroscience program, you need to make the case that you're excited about neuroscience. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was wondering, you've talked a lot about how to get schools to think you're a good fit for them. How do you decide which schools are a good fit for you? Are there certain questions that you recommend people ask each school? Because I feel like the fit is obviously the most important part, but how do you do that from the other side, from the student side?
You're absolutely correct. It's not only when you consider going to graduate school, it's not only if we think you're a good fit for you, you need to think that you're a good fit for us. So it's a mutual decision that's made. Who would like to comment on how you know if it's a good fit for you?
Well, I think when you know your why,
Mhm.
you have that question answered, then the question that you use to select a school is unique to you. For example, location might be important for you. I mean, close proximity to family might be important to you. The research has to be important. I mean, the research that the institution has to match with skills. But then there are other several factors that have to match with unique approach. that is going to be different for everyone. So I think knowing that, then you start researching the school. This is why this process is not just a 1 month thing. This takes several months. You start looking at the research, you talk to your professor, your mentors, where they went to school. I mean, they start connecting, you know, you start building your network. All of these schools have social media platforms, websites, you start researching websites and see if they have what you need. You know, career offices, mental health, wellness, all of those components are important. It's not just the research, but the research could be the driving factor, and then there's all numerous factors that have to match to the unit.
Nancy? Go ahead, Dr. Schwartz.
And when you explore these, talk to the students. They're our best ambassadors. If they are comfortable and they're happy and they feel they're well supported, they can do what they want, they can become independent, all those kind of things. That's the most important thing. Faculty will sometimes try to sell something. They want students to come. So it's really talking to the students that you get, perspectives and time with what the company is, benefits, trends.
So I'd say, look at the websites and you can get a overview of what schools have to offer and what they say, and it can be very flashy and good, and that can help you put you in the ballpark, but then visit the school. When you visit the school and you walk the hallways, you talk to the people, you really get a sense of that culture and that feel of the school. And do you feel welcome there? Do you feel this is a place you can that you can thrive, not just survive, that you can really thrive and enjoy? Are the students happy? Are the faculty approachable? How are you treated when you're there? That's a tip of the iceberg of what's to come. So definitely when you walk on the campuses, you know, lots of websites look great. You walk on the campus and you say, hey, this is a place that I feel at home with. I feel comfortable here. I see the students it's reflected in the students and the faculty. They seem very collaborative. They seem very engaged. What are those things that you're looking for in terms of where you can be the best that you can be? And then there's the other things, right? Location, geographically, you might need to be near home. You need to be maybe looking for some specific type of research that's in a certain school and not in others. So you'll need to look at a lot of those factors as well. All right, go ahead.
Hi, so what advice would you give for when you're at that final part, when you're at the interview process? Like, I mean, of course, you know, they'll have questions for you, you have questions for them. What are some of the questions that you ask to kind of like help like decide for yourself, like, is this a good fit for me there?
So congratulations, you've made it to the interview. Give yourself a pat on the back.
Right.
Get ready, show up, and what do? What are some other advice that you give them? Go ahead, Dr. Diaz-Vasquez. And then we'll go to Dr. Wayne. Go ahead.
So usually you'll know a couple of days before who's interviewing you. So it's not that you have to go to the website and read all the articles, but have an idea of the research that is done at that particular labs that interview you. This could be based on, they usually ask you who you want to meet, or they may have members of the community that will meet with you regardless if you ask about them or not. There's some schools like that a student will also be part of the interview process. So I'll say like the point of the interview is to have a conversation with a scientist. I mean, you should, you know, have questions written up. I mean, practice your elevator pitch, know your why you do research, what your research project, everything that is your application. Materials could be a question with you. If it was a summer program 3 years ago, that would be a question. So know everything that you put on your application, know how to explain your research, and then the rest is ask questions to the faculty. Tell me about your research, or be able to maintain the conversation with the faculty. You don't have to come up with a brilliant question. It's just to keep the conversation going with the faculty. And if you're interviewing with a student, treat the student as if it was another faculty. It's an interview. And just talk about the research. Then there'll be networking opportunities with the general community, and those moments you will ask more about how they're feeling with the programs, how's the environment. But during the interview should be driven by your research, and asking a faculty, tell me more about your research, that will be 15 minutes of the interview time, then talking about the research. But be able to follow up. I mean, what set of experiments are you doing? I mean, I recently read your latest article on this. I mean, what kind of rotation projects are available for incoming students? It's just to keep the conversation going.
Anyone want to add anything more?
Most of the discussion during interviews will be about research that you've done, that's for sure. So guess what? Brush up on what you did, if it was a year ago or last summer or something, because there would have been, discoveries made in that area, probably new papers came out, things like that. And usually we try to people to talk to you who are in areas in which you're interested. So either areas where you have done research in the past and things like that. And again, guess what? They may know the people in the field that you work with here. So, this is not a really large community. And so there can be, things like that. So it's always good to brush up on what you did and make sure that you can answer any questions on your detail. And they can really get the idea that, you're interested in this. And you have a passion for it.
Great.
So be prepared ahead of time. Go ahead and some of the basic questions that they'll ask, tell me about your research. What did you do? Practice with other people and get feedback. So when you get there, it's not your first time going through it. And you want to be prepared, but you don't want to be so rehearsed that you sound like you are a recording that's going on, and then they interrupt you and you don't know what you're saying. So you need to make sure it's natural, conversational. You can say something, you can get interrupted, you can ask, and that it's enjoyable. When you're talking about your research and your eyes light up and you're excited, they see the passion. You don't have to say, I am passionate and I loved it. By you telling it the story, you will show your natural excitement and your passion for it. So prepare, find someone you can trust, ask them to, interview you, do some mock interviews, and then you'll be prepared when you get there. You can just ace it. All right.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Dr. Schwartz spoke on having at least one broadening experience outside of your field of interest. Does that mean if you have an inconsistencies in your experiences in regards to field that doesn't reflect well on you? And if so, do you have grace for those whose field of interest is super small and not many research opportunities are around?
So I'll let Dr. Schwartz, do you want to clarify further on what she thought she heard you say that you should broaden your experience outside your area of interest. Is that what you said?
Yeah, you spoke on having at least one experience outside of your field that you want to be in.
Go ahead, Josh.
I think I might remember what you might be referring to, and I think what Dr. Schwartz was referring to is it could be a good idea to get a research experience outside of your home institution, not necessarily outside of your field of interest.
Yeah.
And some admissions committees see it as a positive to get research experience in more than one place, and that way you learn about a different environment, you meet new people, you learn about a new institution, and get recommendations from a broader group of people.
So I think if you're early on, if you're a freshman or a sophomore and you have opportunities and you're planning forward, you can say, I want to do research at my institution. I want to go do a summer program. I want to go to the NIH. I want to do that. And you can get research experiences in different areas and different places, and that's good. And if you have an interest in one thing and then you want to do more research of that and more research, that's your story. We're not looking for everybody to do the same thing. And you can say, I started doing research in cancer research and I really loved it. So then I did it at this place and I did more and more and more, and that's your story. On the other hand, you may have done research in cancer, but then you said, I loved it, I fell in love with it, but I had this opportunity to do this summer program and did this, and then I came back. for my school and I did that. It's how you tell the story and how you put it together that makes it work for you. So it's your authentic story, whether you do it at one place or at different places, how you put it together to tell your story in a positive way that shows that you love the research, that you have the experience, that you have the passion, that you understand what research is. You understand how to ask the questions, how to look at the data, how to think of the next questions, how to talk about it. And that's really what excites you. So that learning progression throughout your different research experiences is what they're looking for.
Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to clarify. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No worries. So I was just wondering, I've heard kind of mixed advice on whether or not that you should reach out to faculty kind of as you are applying. I know funding can change. Most programs do rotations. So you don't necessarily know in a year and a half, 2 years where those faculty are going to be and if they're going to be accepting graduate students. So just based on your experience, do you recommend reaching out to faculty? If so, what do you recommend saying?
I think it can be okay if it's an authentic interaction. So if you really have read up on it, if there's a faculty member at an institution and you're thinking, wow, that is exactly the type of research I want to do, and my ability to possibly join this lab as a graduate student directly influences my interest in applying here, then it could be okay to reach out, even from the point of view of, I'm an interested student in the science that you're doing, and I'd love to talk to you more about it. Faculty love to talk about the science they're doing. I have also seen it go the other way though, where it's pretty obvious when you receive an email that, okay, this email went to like 50 faculty, copy and paste, and this doesn't feel really authentic to me. That's not really gonna help you at all. But yeah, if you have an authentic reason to reach out, and specifically if there are programs that still do direct admission in the labs, that might actually be part of the process. So as long as it's authentic.
We would agree. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
I know you guys briefly talked about like finding motivation for the specific program that everyone does. I was wondering if you briefly could talk about your why and how you found it for each of your programs.
So when you were thinking of going into research, what was your why? Arnaldo, you kind of talked about your why. And
It's a long time ago.
Mhm.
I applied to grad school in 2001. So So I think my why at the moment, I was part of an NIH MARC program. And so I was conducting research as an undergrad. I knew I wanted to stay in the lab. I knew that that was my path. So at that moment, I did apply to a couple of grad schools. I mean, this is years ago when you have to mail the materials. And there was no fee waivers. So I applied to just a couple of schools. I applied to the school that I did a summer program at, Columbia University, that I did through the Leadership Alliance organization. And I applied to the University of Puerto Rico and Texas A&M. And I ended up going to Texas A&M. I only applied to 3 schools because this is back in the days. But I was applying to schools that had strong chemistry departments. Applied to the University of Puerto Rico because I wanted to have something local just in case. And I know Columbia University was, I spent the summers and I did enjoy my summer there. I mean, working in the chemistry department. And Texas A&M was highly ranked. It was new also in the mentors in Puerto Rico and the chemistry. So I knew my why was research and chemistry, and the selection of schools was based on that.
What was your why, Dr. Wynn?
Okay, so my journey to grad school it was quite different than a lot of like colleagues and other classmates going in, because I took time to work between undergrad and grad. I worked for 7 years, but I worked in like medical labs, clinical labs, doing histology, and I was like a supervisor for a while. And then I decided that I wanted to do more research in pathology, and that was my motivation to go to grad school. And then because I had taken that time, between undergrad and grad, I did a master's first. And so I knew that I was always, even when I was working, I was always curious, like, how did they develop this technology? How did they do this? Constantly asking my supervisor like tons of questions. And then I realized like that motivation and that curiosity is what really helped me get through my PhD program and my master's program. And so when I decided on the master's, I was looking for areas that I was familiar with within that technology realm. But then you know, as most people have discovered, when you get to grad school, your interests can change. And so then I went into developmental biology and then pursued from there. So it was a little bit different of a journey into grad school. So then I would also tell people that, you know, sometimes you don't know what you want to do right away. You could take some time to work and figure it out and then decide to go back.
Anyone else want to share theirs? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
If you would like to, sure. If you want to just relate, sure.
Okay, yeah, I had again, a very different kind of pathway, so, you know, this will give you the real impression, there is no one direct way to do this, and whatever you decide. I love math in high school, and took all the math from my high school, and then went 2 summers to the University of Minnesota for college level math, so when I went to college, then I was already qualified for like, you know, my second year of college, and I did that as a math major. And then I had a professor, nasty little old man, who said, what do you think you're going to do with a degree in math? And, you know, I was like 18 years old or something, and I said, yeah, I don't know, I haven't thought about it that far down. He said, well, you have 2 options. He said, you could work for Bell Telephone. If you've ever seen the movie Decoders, you know what a lot of people with math has been in that space. Or you could go to graduate school, but as a female, you will not get it. I mean, they weren't quiet about these things in those days. They were very overt. And in the physical sciences, in the home sciences, women just weren't there. So all I had was physical, chemistry, math, and physics at that point. So I switched to being a chemistry major. I graduated with 200 chem majors and 5 women. So even that didn't fit at all. And after that, then the chemistry people, they were there. Anyway, so I wanted to go to graduate school, and I thought, well, here's this thing called biochemistry. It has the word chemistry, so let's try that. So I did it, and it was horrible because it was all memorizing metabolic pathways, all the code. And so I, you know, did that for the 1 year, and then I just took a master's class. And I worked for a year, and then decided, yeah, biological sciences is okay. I can do, so I went back, and then I did a PhD in 2.5 years. So I still got out at the age of 24 or something with a PhD, but it was a very checkered background. But that physical science background that I had has really helped me forever. So, you know, even if you do switch and you go in different directions and everything you have acquired can be used in the future. So don't ever worry about that kind of stuff.
Dr. Schwartz has been a pioneer in many of the pathways that have opened the doors for many of us to follow. She was the first woman in many, many different areas that she has done over the years. Do we have a question from the Zoom audience, from the online audience?
Yes, we do. So
Okay.
one Zoom question that we have is there an amount of research experience that admissions wants? And how is it that you can obtain this if you have to work to support yourself during undergrad?
Okay. So how do you know if you have enough research experience? And
So I don't think it's the length, it's the quality. I mean, you could be in a lab for 3 years, I mean, and not having your own independent project or not working in the piece of somebody else's project. I would say like focus on the quality, making sure that you have your independent, that you're driving something, even if it's a small part of your project, that is yours. So I'll say it's like the quality versus the quantity.
And then how about the part about if you have to work full-time, how do you get that?
So I mean, it's hard, I mean, I did work studying as an undergrad first, and then I was lucky to find this NIH. But I mean, if you have to work, I mean, during your undergrad to support you, I mean, yourself, I mean, postbacks programs are a great opportunity to have like, I mean, financial stability while taking and the opportunity to gain research skills. So postbacks, that the prep programs that many of the institutions here has, and also the NIH postback, I think those are great opportunities to have the financial stability to engage in research.
so we are past time, but they haven't kicked us out. You can stay. You can stay. Thank you. If you need to go, we understand people have left. If you still want to ask questions, you can ask questions, or you can come up here and ask questions, but we can take one from the audience. Go ahead.
Actually, can you have people come up to ask?
Oh,
talk to you
sure.
afterwards?
So that's what we're saying. Oh, sure, come up here. So if you have questions, thank you all for coming. We'll be some of us will be at our booths or around. You're always welcome to follow up with us. And if you have personal questions or additional questions we didn't get to, come on up on stage and we're glad to talk with you more.